Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Dara, a CPC certified medical coder. In today's video, I will show you how to solve ICD-10-CM question step by step and more importantly, how to apply coding guidelines to choose correct answer and eliminate other options. Let's start with our first question. A patient has type 1 diabetes mellitus with moderate non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy with macular edema. Which is the correct ICD-10-CM code for this condition? Now pause the video right here if you want to test yourself first. I have already mentioned coding tip here to help you solve the question, but this is just for your practice. You must know all the ICD guidelines to solve this type of questions in actual exam. Let's understand the coding tip. First is always look for type of diabetes. Here it is type 1 diabetes, which leads us to category E10 code. Now in our question it states that diabetic retinopathy. Now retinopathy is obviously an ophthalmic complication. So here we come with E10.3 code. Second, check for severity of retinopathy, and it is moderate non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, which leads us to E10.33 code. From here we can easily eliminate options C and D. Now we need to look for presence of macular edema because it mentioned that retinopathy with macular edema, which leads us to code E10.331. But if you see the instruction note beneath the E10.33 code, which is saying that we also need to assign one of the following seventh character to designate laterality of the eye. If you have read the question carefully, then you must know that eye laterality is not specified. That's why we are going to select 9 as the seventh character for unspecified eye. So the correct answer is option A, E10.3319. Move on to the next question. A patient returns for a follow-up visit after sustaining a fracture of an unspecified carpal bone in the right wrist. The physician documents that the fracture is healing routinely. No specific carpal bone is identified. What is the correct ICD-10-CM code? These are the options. Let's break down this scenario. When coding for fractures, always look for the anatomical site. Here the anatomical site is wrist, which leads us to category S62. And also mention that unspecified carpal bone, which leads us to code S62.10. The fracture is in right wrist, which leads us to further S62.101. So we can easily eliminate options C and D. The difference between option A and B is the healing status, the seventh character. Now the seventh character A is used for initial encounter and seventh character D is used for subsequent encounter. Question says that patient returns for a follow-up visit, which means this is subsequent encounter. So the correct code is option B, S62.101D. The next question is, a 68-year-old patient has hypertensive chronic kidney disease with stage 5 chronic kidney disease. The provider documents that CKD is due to hypertension. There is no end-stage renal disease documented. Which ICD-10-CM code should be assigned? Now here, the provider documents that CKD is due to hypertension. Now, ICD-10-CM guideline is saying that if combination code is available, we should always go for combination code. Let's break down this scenario. For hypertension with chronic kidney disease, use category I12 when only CKD is documented. So we can easily eliminate option A and D. If you see the description of I12.0 is for hypertensive chronic kidney disease with stage 5 CKD. See below the use additional code note to identify the stage of CKD. Here in our question, patient has stage 5 CKD. So the correct code is I12.0 and N18.5. Next question is, a 34-year-old established patient present for routine annual wellness examination. The physician performs a comprehensive physical exam and orders routine screening labs. During the history, the patient mentions that they tested positive for HIV 6 months ago. but have never experienced any symptoms or HIV related illness and have never been diagnosed with AIDS. The physician documents asymptomatic HIV infection status in the medical record. How should this encounter be coded? If you have reviewed ICD-10-CM Chapter 1 HIV related guideline, it is saying that for asymptomatic human immunodeficiency virus infection status, assign Z to 1. When you code for HIV, always look for patient is symptomatic or asymptomatic and whether HIV confirmed or inconclusive, because based on that, diagnosis code would change. So here, provider documents that asymptomatic HIV infection status. So the correct answer is Z21. The next question is a 45-year-old patient with a history of AIDS-related Kaposi's sarcoma 3 years ago is admitted to the hospital with a left distal radius fracture following a fall. The patient is currently asymptomatic regarding their HIV infection and is maintained on antiretroviral therapy. Which of the following code assignment correctly reflects the coding guideline for this encounter? Let's see the guideline first. HIV guideline is saying that when a patient is HIV and admitted for an unrelated condition such as trauma, fracture, or other injury, the code for the unrelated condition must always be principal diagnosis, followed by B21 as secondary. Here, left distal radius fracture code is S52.502A. Two things you need to know while coding HIV cases. First is the reason for admission. Here, the reason for admission is for fracture, and second, this is if patient has history of AIDS or HIV related illness. Always assign B20 code on every subsequent encounter. So here our correct answer is option C. Assign code S52.502A as the principal diagnosis and B20 as secondary diagnosis. Last is Lucy slipped on a puddle of water while walking across her kitchen floor and fell. During the fall, she struck the glass top stove, which shattered. She presents to the emergency department with a bleeding wound on her forearm. Upon examination, the physician diagnoses a simple laceration and notes there are several embedded glass particles in the wound which are removed. Which ICD-10-CM codes should be reported for this encounter? The ICD guideline is saying that injury code must be primary, first listed diagnosis, and external cause code must be secondary, because external cause code can never be principal diagnosis. Now, coding tape is when coding an injury cases, think in this order. What type of injury, the anatomical site, or is it laceration, puncture wound, and animal bite? Then how it happened and where it happened. Let's pick up the keywords based on the coding tip. She slipped, which represent how it happened. Kitchen is the place where injury occurred. Here, the anatomical site is forearm. Now it is also documented that she presents to the ER with a bleeding wound, which means this is an open wound of unspecified forearm. So we need to look for S51.8 category, open wound of forearm. Question says the physician diagnosed a simple laceration, which indicates the type of injury, and also mentioned there are several embedded glass particles in the wound, indicates presence of foreign body. So our injury code is S51.829A. We can now eliminate option A and D. Now let's look for external cause code. Patient slipped on kitchen floor, which leads us to W01 category, and also struck the glass top stove, which further leads us to W01.110 code. We always assign 7th character A for initial encounter, and place of occurrence is house. So with that, we have our correct answer, option B. I hope this video helped you understand how to solve ICD-10-CM questions in the exam. Subscribe to my channel for more medical coding tips, CPC exam preparation, and easy to understand medical coding concepts. Thank you for watching the video.